So here's a question for you. On Monday, are we celebrating Washington's birthday or President's Day? Which one is it? Is it Washington's Day or President's Day? Well, it's a funny story.
Oh.
So Washington, born on February 22nd. When he dies in 1799, there's actually informal celebrations of his birthday to acknowledge the father of this country, if you will. And it's celebrated and through the years. And then finally, it's 1799. It's going to be, I'm going to get you the date right now. Hold on. It's coming in. It's coming in. I feel it coming in. 1879, when it finally becomes a legal holiday. That's when it becomes a federal holiday. And it's Washington's birthday. And it's celebrated on February 22nd. All right. Then comes 1968. A great year. But it's also the year of the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, of which many of us are grateful for, turning every holiday into a 3-day weekend. And so it was established that it would be on the third Monday of the month. And by the way, once they did that, Lincoln's birthday is February 12th. So once it became around those times, there was an attempt to create a sense of precedence beyond just Washington. But you should know, never ever was it changed in name legally. It legally is Washington's birthday still. So never happened. And as I'm thinking about, as we celebrate the President's Day and great leaders, I was thinking, is there a Jewish parallel in terms of how we acknowledge the life of somebody? Now, who would you say is the greatest Jewish person, according to our tradition, if you go all the way back to the Torah, who we think of as being Moses? And I looked it up, and when is Moses' birthday? Was today. Today was Moses' birthday. Now, by the way, it's very convenient that he also died on the day that he was born. I'm not saying it exactly happened like that historically, but in the mind of the rabbis, as they created, he lived a full 120 years, full, from day born until the day he died. And that therefore, that today, earlier, it was from last night to today, the 7th of Adar was his birthday and his yortzeit. Jewish tradition is, if you don't know yortzeit, it's the anniversary of the passing. In the Jewish tradition, we like to think about, we remember people at the end of life, in the fullness of life, of the accomplishments that they have made, rather than the potential of birth. And that's really why we remember the yortzeit, the passing of people. And so the 7th of Adar that we had today. Now, how did the end of Moses' life come about? Some of you may know he wasn't allowed to enter the land of Israel. And so he is told by God to go up to Mount Nebo. And he goes up alone. And we read this. Here's the text tells us. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab at the command of the Lord. He buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, and no one knows his burial place to this day. Interesting. So it says he buried him. Moses went up alone. So the rabbis say, who the heck is that he who did this? So we have two possibilities. Rashi, in the Great Imagination, says actually that God buried him. That out of great respect to Moses for all that he had done, he actually was the one to take care of the burial. Ibn Ezra, another commentator, though, says actually Moses buried himself. Now, what does that mean? He went into a cave, and he just expired and passed away, and he took care of his own end of life, which is actually a message for many people, right? To not have to rely and to impose upon others. And so I began to think then, if we're thinking about the President's Day weekend in Washington and Moses, are there similarities between Washington and Moses? So I was thinking about, how many of you have heard the story? I learned in school that they actually wanted to make Washington king, and they turned it down. Did you learn that? How many of you learned that in school? I just want to know. Right? So, by the way, it's probably not true, but there's actually historical documents that lend it that way. I had to look this up, and in which several monarchists who wanted to be separate from England, but wanted to create their own monarchy. And so they wanted to make Washington the king. And apparently he'd have nothing to do with it. Now, what made Washington unique? We know this. After 2 terms of office, he refused to take a 3rd term. He knew that one has to have a sense of humility in terms of leadership. That you have to be able to say, the country doesn't need me, the country is more than me. Moses, known for his great humility as well. Moses is known as the one who is humble. In fact, in next week's portion of the Torah, Tetzaveh, which is often read around his yortzeit, there's no mention of the name of Moses. The only portion of the last 4 books that doesn't include his name. Only one. And the rabbis say, why? Because it focuses on his brother Aaron becoming the high priest. And Moses has to remove himself in an act of humility to elevate his brother. Isn't that a beautiful idea? To make room for others. Washington, Moses. What does it mean to be a leader? It means to have a sense of humility. Right? That it's not about you, but it's about the greater good of the people and the country. For me, that's what I think about this weekend as we celebrate both of their lives, Washington and other presidents as well.